terms of our response to COVID-19 and the government's death-like grasp on our civil liberties. Although we did get a rare admission today. We got the governor of Rhode Island to admit that once we get 70% vaccination rate, then we can go back to normal, whatever the hell normal is or was as it constitutes today. We'll be putting that video and audio up in just a little while after this show. But joining me tonight is someone who officially qualifies as a repeat offender. She's joined us on a number of occasions, both as a candidate for office, as an individual activist, and someone who is really on the forefront of fighting for your civil rights and your right to bear arms and your right to engage in self-defense, of course, is Jennifer Moffat. Jennifer, welcome back to the Coalition.
Hi, Pat. Thanks for having me. It's been a little bit, huh?
Yeah, it's been a little bit. We're up here in the bunker in the hills high above Providence, Rhode Island, in our secret, undisclosed location. We've got supplies, dried food, all the necessary accoutrements to survive. Well, just another day in Providence, to tell you the truth. But you know, it's had a little bit of a repartee, a little back and forth with the Gov today, and I expressed to him the frustrations Rhode Islanders are feeling, if you will, to what I call the Zoomification of politics and civil liberties here in Rhode Island, in a period of time that literally began days before what is euphemistically referred to as Gun Day at the State House, and now has come full circle to the second Gun Day at the State House. Last year, given the inability to plan ahead to subterfuge our rights and to try and invent all sorts of mechanisms to keep us from expressing our voice to our government. This year, however, it's full steam ahead, isn't it? Let's start from the beginning. Talk about the organization that you're representing and give folks a little bit of an infomercial about what your role and what you folks do in terms of providing and saving folks' individual civil liberties.
Yeah, so I'm part of the Federated Rhode Island Sportsman Club. About 2 years ago, we put together a ladies' committee. We recognize that women in the 2A community are unusually unrepresented. And as much to many people's disbelief, we are a large part of the community. We're a very active part of the community. We care very much about our 2A rights. We care very much about our ability to use guns for our own protection, for fun, for many different reasons. And so we recognized that it was time for women to get together and start, being a voice for the community. So we put together a ladies' committee. We've been very, very active. We've hosted different days for families, for women to learn how to shoot, to get involved in our community, fundraising activities. We've done a bunch of different things. So we've just started less than 2 years ago, and we've really put together a really amazing committee so far. We've got a lot of things planned coming up. We've been very, very involved in this year's session, getting ready for these bills. We all knew they were coming, unfortunately. This is no surprise. I think it is a surprise how incredibly horrible the bills are. They've really outdone themselves this year. But we're ready, and we've been doing this for a little bit. And I'm just part of the machine. We've got an amazing group of people, an amazing group of women who have been working really, really hard for this past year. So I'm just here representing them, kind of bring about what some of the stuff that we're trying to do, and help get the voice out there to let other women know that you're not alone, that there's a lot of us out there who are very happy to stand up and use our voice to fight for our rights. And we're happy to have as many people join as we can.
What's remarkable every year is from the elected officials in the state of Rhode Island, the stunning ignorance, if you will, about firearms, firearm safety, respect and an understanding of weaponry, and also the notion that a individual's right to self-defense is so fundamental to our culture, to our method of government, that in fact, as I'm often want to say, that the act considered most heinous, if you will, in Western civilization is, of course, the taking of a life. But if the taking of a life occurs in an act of self-defense, a legitimate act of self-defense, then we excuse it. We understand it. And in today's society, where virtually gun access by the bad guys, we'll say, by the corrupted, by the criminal element, is unfettered, uncontrolled, unrestricted by any of the laws that they endlessly pass. We understand that the individual needs to arm themselves for self-defense. Now, that's in addition to a healthy outdoors lifestyle that a lot of folks incorporate hunting into. So there's virtually two facets. What they also fail to acknowledge is that there are a variety of groups within our community that, quite frankly, cry out for arms training. And I'm talking, of course, not only just women, but I'm talking about folks in the trans community, folks in the LGBTQ community, who, regardless of attempts at gun legislation, continue to be targeted by criminal elements at an horrifically high rate. And yet these same individuals, the wise men, our salons, the leaders, would deny them the right to bear arms in self-defense. So let's start from the beginning. How important, and this is a role your organization, we've had Brenda Jacobs on, a variety of organizations fill in educating people about weaponry and giving them a healthy respect about what firearms can do, and as a result, not to be afraid of firearms. How important is your community in that?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That's one of our main goals, has been to provide safety classes. And, the left, the progressives, they want us to believe that guns are just inherently unsafe, and that anybody who wants a gun is inherently unsafe, and that we all have bad intentions. And this just simply isn't true. And unfortunately, they don't want to have healthy communication. They don't want to learn. They don't want to hear our side of the story. And we want that part of the story to get out. We love to teach. Just last year, we had a handful of classes. We're really hoping to get more classes out this year. Even despite COVID and all of the restrictions, we're doing our best to work around the restrictions and offer these classes. I think the left, if they really would open their eyes and take a few minutes and actually listen to us and give us a chance, they'd be shocked at the incredibly diverse group of people that want to learn, that want to be safe, that want to understand them. It's amazing. It's not just women. Like you said, it's from all different groups. And we're an incredible community. And every single person who joins, who comes to one of our classes, comes to one of our meetings, is stunned to learn that we are not at all what everybody talks about. We are not the typical gun owner. We just aren't. And we don't fall into those categories. And so we're really hoping to get more of those classes. We're hoping to get through this legislation unharmed. And once we get through these terrible bills, we're hoping to really, focus down on we'd like to have some fishing days. It's not just about guns too. Our community cares about everything. We want to teach women about conservation, about hunting, about fishing, archery. There are so many things that our community gets involved in outside of guns as well. And we want people to learn about all those things. There's tons of different kinds of fishing that I would love to get involved in, that I just haven't had the time. So we want to teach all of those things. There's so many cool different kinds of fishing that you can get involved in. So we're hoping to have ladies' days, some family days, bring your kids, let them learn some safety. And one of the most important things, once you start to handle them and you realize that as long as you're respectful and you treat it with respect, it is incredibly safe and incredibly fun. So we're definitely looking forward to getting more classes going for that purpose.
Now, the sporting community, which includes, as you pointed out, fishing and gaming, as well as riflery, hunting, is incredibly important to Rhode Island's economy. First of all,
Incredibly.
particularly, well, all over the state, really. When you think about Narragansett Bay, when you think about South County, when you think about the Nature Corridor and the hunting and fishing and camping that takes place all the way up western Rhode Island, particularly when you get into the pristine woods in and around Burrillville, it's astonishingly important. One thing that a lot of folks don't realize, and I know you and I have spoken about this, other folks have, is in addition to the economic activity generated for our local Rhode Island businesses, and there are well over 100 organizations in this state that indirectly manufacture components of, completed units of, and or sell firearms and sporting goods equipment, and the jobs related to that, in addition to restaurants and lodging that benefit. The state of Rhode Island last year in 2020 received over $7 million from the federal government in the form of excise taxes collected upon the sale of all of these items, which are sent directly to the state and directly for restoration of sports fishing, wildlife restoration grants. Man, over $7 million went to the state of Rhode Island, one of the highest per capita amounts in the nation. So you're very active within the community. You've got open space considerations from all the family hunting clubs and gun clubs and rifle and rod clubs. Just speak to the type of people that are supported by the sporting community here in Rhode Island.
Well, that's like another example of where they just don't want to be educated. They don't want to hear the truth because it will go against everything that they want to push, their agenda. Their agenda is simply to create fear and to get what they want. And so they don't want to hear from our side. They don't want to hear all the wonderful things that we do. They don't want to hear all the great things. I'm sure Brenda probably mentioned the junior Olympic team. I mean, this is fantastic. We have kids in our state who competed for the Junior Olympics and did fantastic. I mean, this is really important, and those kids should not be ignored any more than kids who get to go to the Olympics for running, or track, for any other purpose. So, we have amazing things for kids in this state, and one of these bills will change the age of being able to own a gun. That will severely hinder these kids and the things that they want to do. And it just doesn't make any sense. The answer isn't to take it away. The answer is to educate and to promote safety and to promote, better access so that we can be safer and we can do things in a better way. There's just so many areas that our group does. They do not want to acknowledge what our community provides in the conservation and environmental aspects. I think most people would be shocked to know that the money that comes in from guns, and what people seem to forget is that while everything else was shut down in the state for the past year, while restaurants and so many small businesses were closed, one of the few businesses and communities that stayed active all the way through this is the gun community. We were probably one of the major revenue streams that the state continued to get throughout the year. And when you consider the revenue stream, isn't just the taxes we take in, but it's the matching federal funds that come through different organizations like the Pittman Rodman Robinson Fund and other things like that money is used directly for our environment, directly for our parks and our recreations. So even if you don't get involved with guns and you don't care about guns, if you like to hunt, if you like to go hiking, if you like to go horseback riding, if you like to ride your ATVs, all of those things use these parks and recreational areas that are cared for, that are taken care of, that are paid for by the money that our community brings in. It's a fact, and they don't like it.
Yeah, it doesn't play to the narrative. It just simply doesn't play to the narrative. So let's talk about the legislation in general, because it's incredibly wide-ranging, and we need to stipulate to a critical point. Rhode Island is one of the most heavily regulated gun environments, if you will, in the nation. And we've got an astonishingly low rate of gun crime already, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
So
We do.
go
Yeah.
ahead, buddy.
I was just going to say, not only do we have an incredibly low rate of crime, but the one where we do have crime, the biggest problem isn't the guns. The problem is our court system and the lawyers who continually fight to get those gun charges reduced for criminals. So all of these bills are going after us, the legal, law abiding citizens who want just to be left alone, live our lives, protect our homes, protect our family, and have a little fun, maybe provide for our family with hunting. We're the ones being attacked, and yet the same legislators that are writing these bills are getting all these gun charges dropped from the criminals that supposedly are the ones that these bills are going to go after, and yet they don't. We already have enough gun laws. We have enough. If they want to enforce those, I would be more than happy to see them enforce the ones that are already in place, but they don't. So the idea of bringing more on board just is illogical, because they've already proven they have no intentions of following through on the ones they already have on the books. So
Right, and I want to point out, our criminal justice system is based on innocent until proven guilty, and the right of every defendant to a vigorous defense, the best possible defense. In some cases, the best possible defense money could buy, but we understand that. But there's a certain amount of hypocrisy when one of the leaders of the anti-gun, the anti-2A movement is a guy named Jason Knight, who profits inordinately from freeing the very people who really don't just break the spirit of the law. Yeah, they break the law. And it's interesting because, he's redone his website. We have copies of the old one, Jason. We still do. Yeah. You can just say what you want.
We're not done. We've got
that whole control C thing, right? But, conspicuously absent from his list of defenses he will maintain is, of course, gun violations. And yet that is, by at least his old website, one of his primary claims to fame. It's a source of how he makes his money. So I respect the right for criminal defense attorneys to engage in vigorous defenses. I don't expect, however, there to be this grotesque conflict of interest where on one hand, one guy's writing the gun laws and then, the next morning he gets up and goes to the office and, makes a whole lot of cha-ching off of perverting those gun laws. It's disgusting. And I can't look into that dark soul. I'll just allow him to at some point in time. But how does it, I've got to ask you, on a personal level, you and I are pals, on a personal level, on a regular basis, individuals in your community, and by the way, I've done the tour of several of the clubs here in the state, and they've been very gracious to have me at a bunch of events. And, in addition to working with young people, they're also masterful at being stewards of open space, all that. But to an individual, all of you are vilified on a regular basis by organizations like, Moms Against whatever. How does that, I got to ask you how that feels, just because, someone like yourself, during the day, you care for people at a very high level in the medical community. At night, you volunteer to work with young people and people in a variety of aspects of the community in order to educate them and train them in safe use of firearms and the ethical use of firearms. Yet on a daily basis, you're vilified by these people. How does that feel?
Well, it is. It's very frustrating. And again, like I said before, we never asked them to speak for us. They like to act like they're speaking for all women. They clearly are not. And I never asked them to speak for me. I can speak for myself, as everybody is well aware. And I don't need them to fight for me. I don't need them to take away my rights. The fact of the matter is if they're afraid of guns, that's fine. Nobody asked them to buy one. Nobody asked them to hold one. And I would just assume they don't if they're not intentional to learn about them. But don't take away my right to do that. If I choose to protect my home, or I choose to go hunting to feed my family, that is my right to do. And I certainly don't need them to speak for me. I know they like to believe that they're end all be all, know all, and that they have the right to speak for the people, but they simply do not. And again, I want to make sure that other women out there know that there are places for them to go where they can feel the same way, where they can feel comfortable and they can feel empowered to stand up for themselves and have their own say. I mean, we've had so many women come forward who would otherwise be afraid to say anything because it's just not acceptable. It's just not what women should do. And it's outlandish. I mean, in this day and age, for women to be told they can't think a certain way or they can't act a certain way or do things is abominable. I mean, it just goes against everything that is feminism. So you have these women on the other side who are screaming about feminism and their rights, and yet they want to take mine away. It's bizarre. It makes no sense. And I want to make it very clear to them that they do not speak for me or my family or any of my friends. And again, I challenge them to come and meet me, come and learn from me, come and find out what we enjoy doing and what we do. And I find it would be, if they put aside their bias and they put aside their fear, I think that they'd be shocked to find out that we're all very much alike. We love our family too. We love our kids. We want our kids to grow and be safe and be happy. We just think it in a different way. We just think of safety in a different way. I have had personal experiences. I grew up on a farm. I grew up with a healthy respect for the need. If you didn't have a firearm on a farm, you were in danger. I mean, there was many reasons why you need it. And so you'll have these women say, well, then just keep them on the farm, except that those same dangers are here in the city. I mean, look at Providence. Look how dangerous it has become. Why would you not want to protect yourself? Why would you want to tell a woman who is suffering from domestic violence that she doesn't have the right to protect herself? I mean, you're literally tying her hands and taking away her right as a woman, as a human being. It goes against everything that they claim that they believe in. And so it boggles my mind. And so many of these bills that are coming out tomorrow do exactly that in multiple ways, whether it's the mental health avenue or the guns on the school zone. Actually, 4 or 5 of them will affect women directly, women and children directly. And I find it bizarre. They literally speak out of 2 sides of their mouth, and one talking about they care about safety, and yet everything that they're doing is the opposite of safety. It's making women's lives more dangerous, harder to protect, and yet they don't want to hear those words. They don't want to engage in honest, true discussion about why that is so.
Let's segue right into the legislation. First off, there are no fewer than 10 or so bills being advocated for on a single day. And I know we've had this conversation a couple years in a row now. And the notion that legislation as important as this, that speaks to a fundamental right. And by the way, on a personal level, I'm what I call post-constitutional. I believe in natural rights. The right, again, to arm oneself, to engage in self-defense is the right that I have by birth. It's accorded to me by no government. It's accorded to me by no individual, nor should they interfere in it. So to take all this legislation and cram it into one day, and it's affectionately referred to now as Gun Day, what does that? How does that speak to you as someone who, by the way, before COVID, helped organize a group of individuals to literally have to maintain a state house vigil? It's still one of the single most impressive things I've seen in terms of political activism. The notion that folks in gold T-shirts would literally, if the building was open, if the house was seated, you folks were there, just there, with a phone call.
A lot of time.
I bet. But how can you possibly justify cramming all this legislation into one night, one day, if it were?
Well, I mean, yeah. Again, it speaks to their inability or them not wanting to hear the truth, because by having so many bills up at once, it takes away our ability to talk to them about each bill. So I signed up to speak, as I usually do, and I get less than 2 minutes. So how can I possibly educate them on 10 bills, let alone one? Like I won't even be able to get enough information on one bill, let alone 10 bills. And that's their goal. That is absolutely their intention. They don't want to hear facts. They don't want to hear information. They don't want to hear our side of the story. And so by doing this is a perfect way of limiting us, about tying our hands, tying our tongues, and limiting how much information that they get. It's simple as that, as far as I'm concerned. Because my experience being down at the State House has been in multiple different avenues too. I don't just testify on 2A information on stuff. I'm very involved in the healthcare community. I've been down there testifying on multiple different healthcare issues. We've been down there on tax issues. 2 years ago, we spent an entire week down there, the week that they suspended the rules and they were doing the budget. I was down there every night, 4 nights straight. So, I'm there on a lot of different issues, not just the 2A issues. And what I've seen is that when we're given the opportunity to really speak and give them our side and discuss things, they learn from us. And they have actually changed their mind on things. I have seen them, not push through a bill once they learned some actual facts. And the fact of the matter is no legislator can know everything about everything. Nobody expects them to. What I do expect is that they're willing to listen and willing to learn. And I find that many of them are not. And so the few times that we have been down there and we have actually given our testimony and have seen that change, that's fantastic. But by doing this, that is taken out of our hands. We're is completely eliminating our ability to testify and to be able to get our point across. And of course, that's what they want.
Right. So let's go take a stroll, if you will, through legislative hell. You mentioned that there were a couple of bills that you feel target women and families directly. Why don't you let's just roll through them one by one and do a little bit of an overview. To you, what's the most offensive in that regard?
Well, I personally am very offended by the mental health bill. As a nurse, as a medical person, I find it very offensive that they would even consider the idea of violating HIPAA. And I get it. They say, well, you're signing it away, so it's not violating HIPAA. Give me a break. You're still asking somebody to provide all of their medical information. And unfortunately, this bill provides no protection for that. I work in a nursing home. We have to have an entire room that is locked and secured with locking file cabinets to store medical information because it's that protected. What's in this bill to provide that? So when I sign off this paper that says, a gun shop can have all of my medical records, and that includes anything, so they can get my whole record. So they're going to know if I've had cancer. Maybe I've had a particular type of cancer that's private, a woman's cancer that I don't want to discuss, that I don't want people to know about. Maybe I've had postpartum depression. Any woman who has suffered through postpartum depression knows how devastating that can be. And you're going to take my right away because I suffered? And here's the bigger problem with that is that you're taking my information, you're handing it over to people who are not medical professionals, who have no education and training on how to handle this information, how to store it, how to protect it, how to keep other people from accessing it. We're providing no protection. And then on top of that, you are now providing with an incredible deterrent for people to get help. We have spent the last 30, 40 years trying to take away the stigma of mental health. Absolutely. So people will go out and access help. And we are going to, in one swift move, with the one sweep of a pen, we are going to now tell people, if you go get mental health help, you are now going to be stigmatized, and everybody in your community is going to know about it and is going to have access to that. That is just horrifying to me. I can't imagine how anybody, particularly liberals, who have been the forefront of fighting for your rights and your protections on those types of areas. I can't believe the ACLU isn't completely up in arms on this. This is the idea that we would set back our mental health by 40 or 50 years for this is just insane, especially when you consider, if you look up the information, the 97% of people with mental health are not violent. The people with regular, and where does it end? And the last thing that upset, well, not last thing, but another major part of this bill that bothers me is there's no indication of which mental health, which is going to prevent me from getting a gun. Schizophrenia, anorexia. Do you have any idea how many diagnoses fall under the category of mental health? Where does it end? Who gets to decide? Who's going to be the person who gets to decide that this mental health diagnosis is a problem and this one is not? There's no indication in there of who is going to be making those decisions, who is going to be figuring that out. There are so many problems with this bill. It's not even fun. It's terrifying is what it is.
My single biggest fear, and then a little bit of an anecdote, my single biggest fear about this particular bill, first of all, we as a nation have finally grown up enough. We've overcome, by and large, the shame of, and there should be no shame, of getting help. We've finally reached that point in the society. So my biggest fear is that for those folks who do not want to give up their firearms, that they will stop seeking help. And
think about the women who suffer from domestic violence and have PTSD from being raped. You're now going to say because I have PTSD from being raped, now I can't protect myself? Where does it end?
And think about the veterans. We have
that's a whole.
We have sent a generation of young men and women to the Middle East. On a personal level, I have to say this. I always say to veterans when we start to talk about politics, I thank them for their service, but I say to them that I come from a space where, to me, the best way to honor their service is not to send them to police actions, to engagements that have nothing to do with the defense of this nation. That, to me, is truly the way to respect a veteran. The second way to respect a veteran is to understand the stresses and lifelong challenges that many face from the horrors of war. And again, as a nation, we've overcome, to a large degree, the notion that people should be ashamed to get help from that. So now you're going to take those people, many of whom own firearms, many of them who use firearms for the sporting life, for many of whom it's a lifelong skill that they acquired, that they seek great enjoyment from, and put them in the position, our veterans, and put them in the position where they have to choose between their firearms, which for a certain number we know, and you know and I know, represent a form of personal safety that is part of a personal lifelong attachment that can't be replicated for someone who hasn't served in combat. And we're going to sacrifice them at the altar of political correctness and challenge them to live a life interrupted by this out of fear from your government deciding arbitrarily, as you mentioned, completely untrained, on a town-by-town basis in states like Rhode Island, who gets to keep their firearms and who doesn't. And here's even another example. This state, for whatever reason, passed something called a prescription medical database. I'm sure you're familiar with it. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, an attorney general from whom many thought was perhaps the worst attorney generals they'd ever seen in their lifetime, a guy named Kilmartin, former policeman from Pawtucket, no discernible legal skills other than having survived Pawtucket, became attorney general. And so he decided, in sort of a backdoor, last-minute deal, to revoke, through the legislature, the right or the need to have a warrant to investigate it, those prescription medical databases. So now you can have warrantless searches of your prescription medical databases. And at that same time, to your point about the ACLU, all right, to that same point, the Rhode Island Medical Society, the ACLU, every single civil rights, civil liberties organization in the state screamed bloody murder, as they should have.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that emotion right now? Where is that purposefulness right now? Where is that opposition to an invasion, a constitutional right at the Rhode Island level, thou shalt not abridge, a constitutional right at the federal level, and a right by birth is going to be interrupted for an extra legal search of someone's medical records? That's obscene.
It is obscene. And it's interesting because we're seeing a progression. And so first it started with the domestic violence bill, which on its surface sounds wonderful, but we all know the inherent problems with that. Then it went to the red flag bill. And then last year they did the bill to change it so that your local police are now involved in deciding, your town police in deciding whether you can be approved, as opposed to the town that you buy the gun in. And these all seem like little things, but they're compounding themselves. We're already seeing some major problems with that bill, with people being denied for absolutely ridiculous reasons because somebody has an axe to grind. So they see you and they can just decide to not let you have a gun because they don't like you, or they don't like your grandfather, or they got into it with your next door neighbor. I mean, any reason they want to use it all. And now we're going to now add in a medical piece. We're basically giving them carte blanche to our whole life to let them make a judgment on me and my ability to exercise my right. They have no right to do that. It's mind-boggling. And again, it's just been little by little. And so when a progressive says to me, it's just one bill, it's just one little thing to protect people. Absolutely not. They're lying. They are flat out lying. They're being so manipulative because this has all been a one layer at a time, just destruction of our rights. And they know that. They're more than aware of that. It's just, right. It's disgusting.
No, I absolutely. We could do an entire show on that. We
I know, right?
We literally could. But wait, as we like to say in Rhode Island, but wait, there's more. There's always parting gifts because in Rhode Island, everybody always goes home a loser, right? So what's our next parting gift from Halitosis Hall, the headquarters, Mordor of your Rhode Island State Legislature? What do you got next?
The other bills you mean that we don't like?
Yeah, absolutely. Let her rip.
I mean, no guns on school grounds is just, it's just idiotic. I mean, everybody already knows, they know that gun-free zones have the highest rate of gun violence. It's nonsense. It's been proven over and over. So to continually push through this complete lie is just, again, it's only attacking the law-abiding citizen who has gone through all of the extensive requirements to get a concealed carry. We have never once in the state of Rhode Island had a problem with a concealed carry illegally committing any act. I mean, it's just feel-good laws. I don't know how much more I can express my frustration with these feel-good laws that do nothing. They literally do nothing to protect anybody. They just harm legal gun owners. You have the assault weapons ban. Good gracious. So
well, let me talk about this. If you don't mind, let me just jump in on the school.
Yep. Yep.
There's a response to violent crime, sometimes referred to as the good guy response. Mm-hmm. The notion that there's someone in the crowd, in the vicinity, who is highly trained on a firearm, and as a result, literally saves the day. And we were all privy to that horrific scene inside a church just a year or so ago, just before, when an individual walked in, bent on assassination, bent on multiple killings, killed one unfortunate person, in the ultimate act of cowardice without them ever seeing. And a member of the church security team. Now, okay, let's dwell on that for just a moment. A church security team. What would Jesus do, right? Fortunately, thank God, this individual, it's all on video, went into the type of motion that only a highly trained individual can do, which is to aim, to take fire, and just the composure, the bravery, the skills of that individual to act as they did literally saved lives. Now, I've got in front of me your New York Times, and I just want to read a paragraph. I'm not big on reading things, but it's very important. This is from the New York Times. The article is dated December 12th, 2018. A state commission that has been investigating the February 14th attack at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School for the past 10 months found that the shortfall in the police response went much further. They initially talked about Officer Scott Peterson. 7 other sheriff's deputies who raced to the school and heard gunshots also stayed outside the building. The commission found, and officers lost even more time scrambling to retrieve bulletproof vests from their cars. The lesson, I'm going to say it. I'm not going to ask you to react to this unless you choose to. This is from me, the host, and by the way, station management. All right. If you wait for the police, if you wait for someone to save your life, you're going to get killed. In an environment like that, one has to, at a certain point, take personal responsibility for either A, having the skills to respond, or B, at least creating an environment where those with the skills, as they say, can pay the bills. So we rely in these no firearm zones, firearm-free zones, upon some magical force that's going to prevent evildoers and with pixie dust, save lives. I'm going to throw back at the anti-gun community one of the great lines that they're famous for. What about the children? If there had been a good guy at Marjorie Stoneman, chances are, I don't know how it could have been worse. But the final point is, how can we responsibly legislate against the presence of a good guy? Your thoughts?
Well, you know what's interesting about that? There was somebody there who had a concealed carry. He was mowing the lawn on his off day, and so because he wasn't there on duty, he couldn't have his concealed carry on him. And he was there. So imagine if he had been able to carry his concealed carry, he could have stopped that guy and saved lives.
Yep.
A lot of people don't like to talk about that. It's a sad state of affairs. You know, the interesting thing, I know Brenda talked about this when she was on, and again, the left doesn't like to acknowledge that most people who have a concealed carry are much better trained. But the other thing is that when somebody decides to conceal carry, they're making a choice. They've made a conscious decision to have that on them, and we're taught that you need to be prepared. If you're going to carry that with you, you have to understand that there is a chance that you may use that and that you probably will harm somebody in the defense of somebody. And you have to be ready and willing to do that. And any person I've ever known that has a concealed carry has already made that conscious choice. So it's not something that people take lightly. It's not like people just, again, they just have this bizarre idea of what gun people are. That we're just like these gunslinging, people running around, throwing them all around. It's just bizarre. I mean, and again, if they spent time talking to us, they would understand that. They would understand the incredible responsibility that is to have that on you and how seriously people take that. Right. Nobody wants to kill somebody. Nobody carrying wants to do that. You would do that only to save somebody else or yourself. So, the fact of the matter is because even though they don't have the courage or the interest to do that for somebody else, doesn't mean other people don't have that. And I think there's a piece of them that can't grasp that concept. They can't understand that somebody else would do that for somebody else. Right. It's kind of sad, to be honest.
What you got next? Let's keep the love alive here. What's next up in the steady stream of legislation?
Yeah, the magazine ban is ridiculous.
Let's talk about this for a second. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, again, they love to come at you with the lies. Oh, we just want to, we want to ban high capacity. This bill has nothing to do with that. Yes, it's banning high capacity. It isn't just banning high capacity, it's banning all of them because they added a new fun piece to it with the removable plates at the bottom. And it's so ironic because again, because they're so uneducated and they choose not to educate themselves, the purpose of that removable bottom is so that you can maintain it, so you can clean it, so you keep it safe. So they now want to take away the ability for people to keep their firearms safe and clean and in good working condition. Everything they do, every bill that they write has these negative unintended consequences that are more harmful than anything they can imagine that are done with the guns. It's quite bizarre.
And completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
Let's step aside from the legislation for a second here. Your organizations run either on volunteer fuel or money raised for the most part from each other, don't they?
Yeah, pretty much. Kind of
Yeah,
like
I mean,
campaign.
yeah. I was gonna say you go to all each other's, covered dish suppers. You go to all each other's range days. You go to all each other's training. And listen, God bless. I mean, this is a community that also is very charitable and very supportive of folks who are not. It's part of the fabric of America, and it's part of the fabric of Rhode Island. Your opposition, though, is very well financed, aren't they?
And then some, yeah.
Mom's demand. Folks would like to think about that. And I'm not trying to vilify anybody. I have friends, people that I agree with on other issues, that I've worked alongside of, that I've marched alongside of. But quite frankly, organizations like that are nationally funded. Mm-hmm. And we've seen multiple situations where, given that outside funding, they've set up multiple, I'll call it duplications of effort, by having multiple commissions so that those folks can accept multiple campaign donations, essentially gaming the system to work around the ceilings, and then have multiple organizations able to donate to the same candidate, even though at some level the money is coming from outside of Rhode Island. And it's just, the system's being gamed, while at the same time grassroots efforts at maintaining individual liberty. By the way, at what point does the word choice end on a red-blue divide? If individuals believe in personal choice, body autonomy, self-direction, self-ownership, mm-hmm. How come that only happens part of the time? That's something I don't get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have yet to get anybody on the left to be able to answer that question for me.
Right. And you know what? And again, there are times when my friends on the right, I'm a libertarian, so everybody hates us. I always figured, if I'm not pissing everybody off at some point or another, I can't be doing my job, right? But but I just wish that for a moment we could all lay down our rhetorical arms and just listen to each other, because mm-hmm. that's what's missing. And big money politics continues to drive wedges in our communities, and particularly on issues like this. Do we have any real history of mass gun violence here in Rhode Island at all?
No, that's the ironic part. We're one of the safest states in the union, and yet, personally, I think they come at us so hard because they think we're an easy target, and we haven't been. That's the irony of it all, is that I think because we're such a small state, we're able to mobilize quickly. We're able to stay very well connected. This community is very close. We're very connected. We're very, we see each other at different events. We rely on each other. And again, not just for guns, for so many other things. I mean, we do fundraisers and we do different community days and stuff. It's a bigger picture of a community. It's a picture of what life used to be, and I think it's interesting because I think if people took the time to get to know us and come into our community, they would see that this is something to be aspired to. This is, a picture of kind of where life should be instead of where it's gotten to. And it's a real shame, they're really missing out. I feel bad for these people, honestly, and, they have an agenda. I'm sure they really, to some degree, feel like they need to, save the world. But at the end of the day, they're getting paid. We're not. We're doing this from our heart. We're doing this for our families. We're doing this for our own safety, our own protection. So I think that's why you see such a huge outpouring. Their group is like a handful of people. It's the same handful of people over and over again. A handful. We are half the state, when you put our numbers up against each other. And again, that's another reason why they don't want us down to the state house, because they hate that visual. They hate being reminded that we are a very large community, that we're very involved, that we're regular people. They hate having that stereotype of us destroyed. But we continue to do it every day, and that's fine. I'll continue to fight that fight.
And I'll just say that we've got a situation brewing and up at the State House. Lieutenant Governor, now Governor McKee, is not an elected governor. And it can be said that his narrow win as lieutenant governor, which has propelled him into the governor's office, was based significantly on the support of the 2A community. I had the opportunity, if you will, to reach out to the McKee administration and talk about where they stood on the on some of this legislation. And to me, what was fascinating was I got the sort of standard initial response, well, we're just worried about COVID. And, listen, at a certain level, I get that. That is an exigent crisis unto itself. But at the same time, that does not absolve you from, as the governor, now that you are the governor. It could be 10 days, whatever. But it's clear that this is a governor who has been preparing himself for this office for the last 6 years. And I won't fault that for a minute. But we asked him the question because we wanted a real understanding. And it took me a couple of responses. And I'll just read it out to you, to folks in the 2A community. They need to understand this. Mr. McKee needs to understand this. And this is a quote. The second time I've quoted it. I apologize for that. But in response to your question on various legislation, the incoming governor and his team will review and address such legislation when he takes office. Right now, the incoming governor is, focused on that. So then, that was the second or third try, if you will. Then we actually had, let's give this one more shot. And bear with me. Boy. Okay, just days after statement, where does governor really stand on the amendment? And there was an infamous post in social media by Representative Caldwell. And again, I'm quoting, I apologize. Today I was proud to introduce a package of gun bills alongside Attorney General Peter Nerona and with the support of more than half of my House colleagues. In addition, Rhode Island General Treasurer Seth Magaziner, Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea, and Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee. So we tried to follow up again and say, okay, you just told us that the lieutenant governor wasn't going to be really focused on this because of COVID, and you just told us that, if you will, that the governor really, the implication was that he didn't have any defined opinion. He didn't really, he wasn't focusing on it. The implication was that it was a back burner. Let me see if I can get this down once, sorry. So finally, in and around, the third week of February, I finally get a response. The lieutenant governor has long been on the record in supporting the banning of sale of military-style weapons, limiting the number of rounds a magazine can hold, and preventing civilians from carrying a concealed weapon on school grounds. These are not new policy stances. Does that sound like a two-way-friendly governor?
Not even a little bit.
Does that sound like a governor that anyone who's concerned about the right to bear arms and the right to engage in self-defense should support in the coming election?
Yeah, unlikely. Yeah, he needs to really think it through how he goes forward, because again, our community is big and we're loud and we're involved and we're close knit, and we'll be watching it very closely, where he goes with this. Actions are going to be much louder than his words. I'm sure he feels the need to align himself and find some kind of a middle ground here. But at the end of the day, how he actually acts is going to be watched very closely,
Right.
So.
And we're fortunate because
I challenge him.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
We've got leaders.
I challenge him to look at the number of people who have testified and have sent in written testimony this week. Might give him a little picture of how many of us are out here.
Right. And we're fortunate because there are people out there that are willing to stand up for our rights. I mean, Chash Kalenda, who is, I guess, contemplating a run to be attorney general, is clearly in the corner of the individual's right to bear arms. Someone that I have a great deal of regard to, Bill Hunt, out in the East Bay, has run clearly on perhaps the most blunt two-way agenda. But then again, we're libertarians. I don't believe in red flag laws. I don't believe in, any laws. I don't even believe in CCW permits because I don't believe you should have to have a permit. So, we're on a little bit of a different level. But, Mike Chippendale and guys like that have continued to try and do the right thing under immense political pressure. So it's not completely hopeless, but here's a guy who positioned himself as a moderate choice, a common sense choice, if you will, to be governor. And I don't know. He hasn't let up on COVID restrictions, despite the fact that we're into how do we like to put it? We just celebrated the 1-year anniversary of a 15-day attempt to flatten the curve. Despite the fact that individuals should have a choice to engage in consensual commerce if they do so. I don't know. I'm not sure what to say. Did we just have a problem with the live stream? Is that okay? Anyway, are you still with me?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, great. So I guess let's talk about tomorrow. And this week has served as a wake-up call for a lot of people. Not only do we have tomorrow, we have another shot at this with the Rhode Island Senate. So give folks, if you will, in closing, sort of an overview of what they can do. I understand it's a little bit, it's too late to sign up to testify. Doesn't mean you can't make a couple of polite phone calls, does it?
No, absolutely. Yeah. So it is too late to sign up to verbally testify. You can still send in your emails. You can send in emails until 1:00 tomorrow. You can, like you said, still make phone calls. Call the speaker. Call your representative and your senator. We ask that everybody call their own reps and senators. Make sure when you call that you lead with your name, your address, the fact that you are a constituent and that you do vote, and give them, let them know how you feel about these bills. We do have some good bills too, so feel free to let them know. Even if your representatives, senators are on our side, feel free to give them some support, because there are some good bills coming out tomorrow too. So, we ask everybody if you can just throw out a real quick email and just let them know. It can be as simple as, I oppose these bills. Go to the Rhode Island FOL website. Everything is nice and easy. We have it all up. We've got some people who have done some amazing work making it super simple. You go right to the front page. It's all right there in red and green. It tells you which bills are good, which bills are bad, how to testify, how to write written testimony. So you still have time to get that in. So we ask that everybody does that. The more the better.
good luck tomorrow. I'm hoping to see you out there tomorrow myself. I hope if you have an opportunity, I know you put in a lot of hours. You've been on the front lines of medicine during this entire COVID crisis. You volunteer. You've got a family. You've got your own personal responsibilities. Yet you managed to find the time to engage on behalf of the community. If you could spare a few minutes next week, there's rumor that the Senate will be doing something similar in about a week or so. But maybe if we can get together and just kind of do a reflection, sort of a day after on tomorrow's entertainment, as I like to call it, and then gear up and plan for the next wave, and then gear up and plan for how we're going to approach our new governor, because he can only hide behind the whole COVID thing for so long. Yeah. There are issues in the state that, as important as the COVID response is, that need to be attended to, and there are a lot of forces hiding behind COVID, using COVID as an excuse. The Zoomification of civic politics here in Rhode Island, the notion that someone like you can work all year and you're only entitled to a 1-minute verbal testimony is just absolute balderdash. And this is one of the reasons why this government lockdown has to end. Not to have people go crazy, maskless, whateverless, thisless, thatless, infecting each other. I think we're all adults. We all have the opportunity to behave as adults. We all are also, though, entitled to make our own choices. And the government should not be allowed to continue to hide behind tragedy so that they can engage in their usual machinations in our own little personal swamp here up at Halitosis Hall. Thank you. Just one more time, the website and how folks can reach you and or other members of your committee.
Yep. The best and easiest way is to go to Rhode Island FOL, go right to that website, and it's Rhode Island Firearms Owners League, and that has everything right there. You can find me on Facebook too. I have a couple of pages I run on there, Yellow Shirt Brigade and the legislative updates. But the best way to go is the RIFOL. That's going to take you right directly there. You're going to have all the information you need. Feel free to reach out to us. We're all very engaging. Go to the Federated page. We answer all messages pretty quick. We're happy to answer any questions about how to write an email, what to say. If you have questions about the bills, we're more than happy to answer. So reach out to us. We're all here. Excellent.
For folks joining us for the very first time tonight, the Coalition Radio has been on the air for about 7 or 8 years. We've been hosted at a variety of places, from WPRO to the fine folks at localprov.com. This past year, in timing unique to Rhode Island, we decided to expand about a month before the plague hit. Timing's everything. But what we created here is a website with about 4 nights a week of programming. We'd love to have you take an opportunity to like our page and follow our page. You may not agree with everything that we broadcast here, and that's fine. But we're going to have a conversation that's going to be fact-based, science-driven, that's going to approach all of the third-rail issues in American politics, and particularly as they impact us at home. It'll feature my weekly conversation. It used to be with Jeaner, but now it's with Dan. My Thursday afternoons with Dan, I think I'll call the new one, where we ask again the questions that regular Rhode Island media, for whatever reason, won't. You'll never hear me asking Dan about what the impact of people sitting 6 feet apart as opposed to 5 feet as opposed to 4 feet. No, we're going to ask him about the fundamental operations of government, whether it be economics, whether it be moral or procedural as it was today. And we're going to ask him really hard questions. So we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network. You can find us at coalitionradionetwork.com. Also, facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. And, of course, as always, on the mighty, mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. Folks, if you could take a moment to like our page, follow us, all that stuff, it allows independent media an opportunity to sort of rise above the noise that is created by the mainstream media, who, quite frankly, for whatever reason, chooses not to engage with activists like we do tonight on a routine level, where we spend 45 minutes or so getting into the weeds, where we actually have a conversation about the issue and the underlying causes of the facts. That's what the value we have for you. And we hope you'll join us in the future. Jen, again, thanks. And let's make sure we connect next week to do a continued follow-up. All right, God bless.
Yep, thanks for having me, Pat.
Folks, have a great night. We'll be back on the air tomorrow night at about 9 o'clock. We'll see you then.